Working with the dead has always been one job that most would be creeped out by, but I have to admit I love my job. While being a coroner takes some special skills, it can be odd when you're the only living person who is walking the halls. While I have never believed in ghosts or spirits, there is one event in my life that changed my view the day the body of Ed Smith had gotten onto my table. It started as my normal Monday night. As I pulled up to the building around 9:40 p.m. already I knew it was going to be busy for sure. Heading in I noticed our night guard looking a bit shaken, which was odd cause Mike never feared much, but tonight something had him spooked. "You okay?" I asked as Mike greeted me. His skin seemed a bit pale and he seemed to be sweating. "You have a new body that arrived tonight," he said, still shaking. I was confused. He never had issues with any of the bodies that came in. He didn't say much more but excuse himself for the night. Either way I had a job to do and a long night ahead of me. After changing I started down the hall into my office. Mike was right. A file sat on my desk, along with a note. How strange, normally it's the file. Pulling the note off the file I noticed it signed and dated for today, but was more puzzled by what I was reading. "Hello Beth. Just wanted to let you know that the body we sent to you is a part of a huge police investigation, so we ask for all the details you can give us on this one. We know you are the one of the best and that is why we sent the body to you, but there was something that you needed to know. A couple other coroners had turned down the job due to strange things they said that happened once they had the body. So you're our last hope. We need your report by Friday morning at the earliest. Thanks again for accepting this job. Chief Briggs." I almost fell back into my chair. I hadn't gotten any word on accepting this job. In fact, I was sure I never talked to Chief Briggs. I studied the note for a few more minutes before picking up the file. Inside the report showed that the victim Ed Smith had been found by his wife, who said he wasn't breathing, and he had been bleeding from the back of his head. I gathered all my equipment knowing this was going to be a hard night. Once inside I set up my workstation and placed the file on the counter. From the view of Ed's body I could tell something was very wrong. While I had found the wound on the back of his head, he had dried blood under his nails. "What happened to you?" I am almost expecting an answer. If there is one thing I can say about my job, I have my ways of making it easier to work. I worked into the hour noting everything with my recorder, and adding my own notes into the file. Opening his chest, I noticed nothing abnormal. In fact, everything seemed to be in its place, organs and bones all perfectly healthy. "Well, there goes my heart attack idea," I said, knowing the possibilities were fading, leaving me confused. The only thing that seemed to come to mind was murder, but I would soon find out that this wasn't anywhere near what I was thinking. I took a small break as I sat at my desk. Whatever made the other coroners not take this job, I was beginning to understand why. But my night was only beginning and I would soon learn the truth. Ed was a real mystery, as I had found bruises and small cuts along his arms and legs. This was troubling as I never had problems doing my job. "Come on Ed, help me out," I joked as I noted the findings, but I almost didn't know what to think as the lights flickered upon me asking. Turning my back, I tried to think about the possible fight that maybe he had with a thief, that could explain the cuts and bruises, and while was fighting he was slammed into something causing his head wound. Still, I wasn't sure how sound anything was I was coming up with. In fact, that one puzzle I couldn't solve. I watched the time go by as the night passed into early morning. "Well Ed, I guess we will talk more tonight," I said, cleaning my table and shutting him in the small box for the day. I spent my morning preparing myself for my second night with Ed, knowing I had few ideas going about how and what happened. I was sure tonight would be better for me, but I was wrong about having a normal night. I arrived and started looking over Ed's body again, finding all the same noted findings. "What the hell Ed," I said, almost in disbelief. There had to be more I wasn't seeing. I was only a couple hours into my shift when I felt a strange coldness fill the room. I froze in my tracks. Ed's eyes were open, those faded brown eyes staring right at me. I didn't know what to do, but I bolted to my office, leaving Ed on my table. I tried calming my nerves, but I didn't understand how that was possible. The man was dead and I didn't know how to note something like this. Gathering my courage, I started back toward the table where Ed lay. What the fuck, I was shocked he now had his eyes shut. Was I just imagining seeing them open? Okay Ed, no more funny business, I said, sitting back down. My ideas of a break-in or being in a fight was working out as his body seemed to show signs of a struggle. After the final process notes, I started to prepare Ed for the services. I was glad when nothing had really happened for the first hour. In fact, the embalming went normally. Well, Ed, was great having your company, I said, shutting him back into the small box, gathering all my equipment and notes as I headed toward my office. Making all my final notes and preparing to send them back, I noticed a small flicker of the lights as the room would go dim for only a few minutes. Great, now the power is acting up. I stood grabbing my flashlight and heading toward the fuse box in the storage closet. The hallway was cold like walking through a winter's storm. I rubbed my arms and tried to focus on getting to the fuse box. Once inside the storage closet, I pushed past a cleaning cart and some supplies. Getting closer to the box, a strange smell made me gag like a corpse that had died some years ago. The light came back on, almost blinding me. I screamed as Body Shape looked at me from the top shelf. Its grinning face stretched from ear to ear, the large yellow eyes seemed to look into my soul, and I couldn't move as the fear held me there. Then the thing let out a loud scream as I bolted out into the hallway. Finding my strength, I had found myself running back into the cold room where all the bodies laid. I must have spent almost an hour hiding with the dead, before swallowing my fear and walking back into the hall. Once back in my office, I wondered what I had seen. Whatever it was, I knew it couldn't be human. In fact, it seemed like one of the dead. Beth, hey, you in there? Mike's voice called. I rushed to the door, never so happy to see another living soul. He seemed pale and shaken even more than before. Did you get done with the body? He asked, and I nodded as his expression seemed a bit odd. Yeah, he is cold storage now, I said, looking confused. Mike's expression seemed to tell me otherwise as he just pointed to the exam room. You sure? 'Cause he is still out on the table. What? No, I know, I put him in cold storage. I pushed past him, running toward the exam room. Mike was right behind me as I opened the double door. I fell backwards. There was Ed laying on my table, his body turned on his side and a strange symbol burnt into his left shoulder. I quickly grabbed my notepad and started to note the sudden mark. I know I put you away. What, didn't like your room? I said, turning Ed onto his back. Mike helped me return Ed back to the cold storage. This time, I opened the lid 3 times to double check before accepting he was in there for good. That was crazy, Mike said, unsure what to think before following me back to my office. I locked the door behind us and noted the mark in the report. Mike agreed to stay. I felt safer having someone else with me. Here, a walkie-talkie, just let me know when you are ready to leave, Mike said before exiting the office and doing his final rounds for the night. The rest of the evening was spent doing my paperwork for Friday, but something made me uneasy. I couldn't say why, but I felt something was watching me. By 1:00 a.m. I gathered my stuff and changed out of my work outfit. Hey Mike! You there? I'm ready to leave. I waited, but nothing but static and a strange noise I couldn't make out. I tried a couple more times, but after getting the same thing, I decided to go meet him at the front desk. Mike, I called, but he was nowhere to be seen. Maybe he wasn't finished doing his rounds. Either way, I wasn't going to look for him knowing he would return. After 20 minutes I started to get nervous. He never took this long. Beth, I turned and almost jumped as Mike stood looking at me. I'm ready to leave, I said as he just gave me a weird look, then he started to twitch and shake, falling to the floor. I quickly tried calling 911, but the phone lines seemed to be down. In a panic I grabbed my cell phone. Come on, fuck. My phone wasn't working either, just the same static as before. What's wrong, Beth? All I wanted was just a bit of company. I turned and screamed. There was Ed standing on his own. The sounds coming from down the hall made me panic as the dead were walking now, each one calling me name. I ran up the staircase to the second floor and shut myself inside, hoping this was all just a bad nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. But I hear them mocking me and calling my name even louder. Beth, come and play, we just want your soul, Ed called. His voice sounded deeper than before. I had spent an hour trying to focus on anything but the horrors down below me, but they seemed to mock and laugh at my fear. I awoke to the sound of a great force against the door. I tried to the windows, but they were locked and the only place to hide was under a desk that barely fit anyone. Oh Beth, the door crashed open as Mike's body twitched and shook as he walked toward me. His laughter made me uneasy, but falling down to his knees he landed face first, off kicking and screaming like a child when they didn't get their way. I will have your soul, he cried as his flesh melted into the floor and the same thin-looking creature with wide eyes and twisted grin stood before me. I passed out due to fear, hoping in my last moments that I only knew a quick death. Beth, my eyes focused. My boss stood over me looking confused and worried. He had me sent to the hospital while the police had looked all through the building. He told me from a video footage that Mike had been seen roaming the halls with a bloody knife. While I waited for him at the front desk, we struggled and I was able to get off of me, which then I had gone up the stairs and locked myself in. No, Ed did this, I said as the doctor just looked puzzled, noting everything I said. Then the dead started to roam the halls. Oh God, the demon. My boss just shook his head before excusing himself outside to talk to the doctor. In the quiet of the room, I tried to focus, hoping I would wake up again. But after a few minutes I decided that maybe I was going crazy. Standing, I headed into the bathroom and splashed some water on my face. I almost jumped off my reflection, looked back at me with a twisted grin and got close as I tried to call out for help. No use, they won't hear you. I could stop myself as I started to bang my head into the glass, laughing as I went. I could taste blood in my mouth and feel it covering my face, only to fall to the ground feeling weak. Finally free, the demon replied as I faded out into the darkness. My thoughts were of my family and the people I loved.